Would you date you? I've seen a lot of men post this and it seems to be in their mind a gotcha. And then when they're asked the question by other people, like, would you want your daughter to date a man like you? A lot of them are stumped because they wouldn't want to date themselves. They wouldn't want their daughter to date a man like them. But when women are asked, would you want your son to be with a woman like you? Often, yeah, yeah, we would. In fact, one of the things that both my sons have told me is that the thing that attracted them to the women that they have dated was the side of that woman that reminded them of me. The qualities in me that made them feel safe and loved and respected and listened to and validated and encouraged and challenged and inspired. That was what motivated them to approach this woman. Her strength and her independence and her class and her demeanor, you know, and they saw all those things in me. So going back to the original question, would you date a person like yourself? I think for me, um, that has actually been, in a sense, one of my problems is that when I looked at men, I fell in love with men in the past, sometimes based on their potential. And I saw a quote that was so powerful. And it said, when you look at someone and you see all the good things in them, you sometimes think of what you would do if you had those qualities, how you would maximize them. So you're not even falling in love with their potential, you're falling in love with the potential that you would utilize and take to its fullest. So, would I date a person like me? Yes. Would I marry a person like me? Yes. And have I done that to some certain extent? Yes. But the problem is that I don't just want a person like me, because I think we are attracted a lot to our similarities, the compatibility. That's the word that I use. But I think it's the differences that also make life interesting. So, when it comes to morals, values, principles, work ethic, a lot of things. Yeah, I want somebody like me. But I also realize that I want someone complementary to me. I want someone who has things I don't have, has strengths I don't have, is strong where I may be weak, so that we can balance out each other. I like masculinity. Um, and everyone who's a balanced person has some masculine traits, some feminine traits, but I definitely like masculinity, which is, in a sense, the opposite of me, right? So, to answer that question, yeah, I think if you're a well balanced person who has been working on themselves, you would definitely want to date somebody like you, because you don't want to date, if you're a disciplined person, dating an undisciplined person is probably going to be nerve wracking and annoying as it can be. If you are a goal minded, ambitious person who challenges yourself, dating a person with no ambition and no drive and no discipline, or no persistence once they hit an obstacle, probably would drive you nuts. So, in my mind, the only people that would answer no to this question are the people who really know that they haven't done the work to be a good match. And maybe it's a good question for those people to realize that they haven't done the work to be a good match. But I think for a lot of people, especially for a lot of women, yeah, we would want to date ourselves because we've been working on improving and developing, many of us since we were 10 or 11 years old. And now we're in our 20s, our 30s, our 40s, our 50s. We've been doing this almost our entire lives, trying to be a good partner, trying to be a person worth um, hooking up with, in the sense of a lifetime, not a one night stand, but a person worth hitching your wagon to. In the Bible, they talk about being equally yoked. Well, the whole idea of that is the image of, you put these two animals on a plow and you want them to both have strength, both have the ability to go in a straight line, both have the ability to work, so that one of them doesn't end up pulling more than their fair share. And I think that, a lot of people have narrowed that idea of being equally yoked down to, I want a Christian person. And that's not what it was about at all. It was really about much more than the lip service that you give to a certain faith. So I think this is a good question. I think that people who think that it's a gotcha often don't recognize or understand the depth of what they're asking, because for many people, it's not a gotcha. And in fact, for many people, they're in a sense settling because they are not meeting people that are like themselves. You know, a lot of times women are dating men who are not as educated, not as financially successful, not as motivated, not as disciplined, not as emotionally secure, not as emotionally regulated. Those men haven't gone to therapy. Those men don't have a workout regimen. They don't eat healthy. They don't go to the doctor. They don't get annual physicals. So literally you could list all the things that they don't do that could be beneficial to them having a healthy, long, prosperous life. And this woman is still dating them anyway. So she's not dating someone like herself. She's dating someone with a lot fewer qualities of success and prosperity than she has. And a lot of times when you say something like that, the response from men is, well, we just don't think those things are important. And as an adult, you have a right to have your priorities and your opinions. But thinking something isn't important isn't the same as it not being important. And a lot of times as we grow, we realize that things that we might not have thought were important in our teens are very important when we get to our 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s. May you walk in Synergy. Would you date you?